Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. There's a point that was brought up in Rachel and John's live video last night, even though I set an alarm on my phone for 6:30, and by about 6:45 I was sound asleep in the chair and missed most of it. And I'm really sorry. I managed to get there before it finished, but I could only catch the gist of the end of it, if you know what I mean, so I couldn't join in with much, but I made it at the end. Better late than never. Just a very long day and got an awful lot done, and just ran out of steam basically. You have to bear in mind I'm usually up at 5 in the morning and I'm quite busy a fair bit of the day, and once it gets to having my evening meal and my glass of wine, the steam engine just runs out and I go downhill fast, and I can fall asleep in seconds once I sit down and sit still. Doesn't matter what's on the telly, doesn't matter how good it is, you know, that's just one of those things. Anyway, a point that came up: should you share water? And the simple answer is no. Do I share water? Yes. My reasons are my own. As you know, I use RO water, and it takes a fair bit of my time keeping up with the supply. I do damage limitations in as much as I don't mix up huge volumes and water dozens and dozens and dozens of plants with the same batch, especially as I've got different feeding requirements. Like now, I've just done my Masdevallias, Restrepias and Miltoniopsis. Well, they get a very low level feed, so I mixed up enough to do those, and only those. It's also been pointed out that if you're a bit like me and a bit paranoid when you repot a new plant, in other words one that's come from somewhere else and is in an unknown media with unknown care and treatment, it's a new plant to you. When I repot that, I'm quite thorough in cleaning off my roots totally. Well, there's a downside to that, because as we all know, if you use organic media to far lesser extent in non-organic media, but still to a small extent, inside your pot are microscopic bacteria and stuff. Some of them are good stuff, and they can help actually transform some of your nutrients into a more usable form, and they are beneficial. But there are also in amongst them some that you don't want, and you can't pick them out. You can't get a pair of tweezers and go, right, that's a good one, that's a good one, that's a bad one, that's a bad one. You either deal with the lot or you don't deal with any of them. Now here's a bonus with shared water. If I've got a new plant in, say I got a new Masdevallia, and I totally cleaned it off and used hydrogen peroxide to clean my root base and the base of the plant, there are no microbacteria left on that plant, they're gone. And now I'm going to pot it in absolutely brand new media that's also got none of these things. So it's now in a sterile environment. Now, in amongst some of my existing plants that may have been in their pot for quite a while, they will have re-established that, micro base in the plant. Most of that stuff's probably good stuff, because if a fair bit of it was bad stuff, my roots would go down, my media would break down, and it would smell. Yeah? So you can assume, but that's all you can do is assume. You can't prove it one way or the other, that there is some good stuff in those other pots. Now what happens when I share water? Yeah, you got it. Yeah, I pour some water through a pot with some of the good stuff in, straight into my brand new Masdevallias pot with its brand new media, and I'm transferring some, and slowly but surely I will build up that good base again. Downside, if there's any bad stuff in the pot, you're going to transfer that straight to the next pot, and the next one, and the next one. So if at all possible, don't share water. It's as simple as that. Just keep everything clean. Whatever water you need to water your plant, let it go down the bottom of the pot and into a separate container, and perhaps use it on the garden or something like that. I mean, I still hate wasting water. It really upsets me to waste water, so I do my best not to. But my damage limitation is by using small batches, so that I don't you know, I used to mix up enough to do virtually every orchid in one go. Well, I don't do that anymore because I can see the risks involved. If you've got an endless supply of water, you've got no excuse, quite honestly. Just don't share the water. Just do it as a one-off, through the pot, out the bottom, and somewhere else, wherever you choose. As I say, I choose this time of year for most of it to go on the garden. But if you haven't got water coming out your ear holes, I mean, some people are metered. You know, they have to pay for every bit of water they use, and it can get expensive if you're chucking it down the drain day in, day out. So there may be a need for sharing on a cost basis. It might be that you use rainwater and you've run out, you know, or you're getting low. So, you know, just using it once may not be a good idea. You've also got people that use a dunking bucket. Well, that's sharing water. I don't care how you disguise it. If you've got a tank of water with feed in and you throw your plants in there, you're sharing water. Yeah? So just have a think about it. I've still got to say, the bottom line is, if you can avoid sharing water, especially with potted plants, then do so. I mean, some people, you know, in the UK, I turn on the tap and endless supplies of fresh water come out, but it's no good for my orchids. It's very hard water where I live. I've got a TDS value straight out of the tap, twice as high as the water I use with my feed added. Yeah? So I'm not prepared to put that on my orchids. Mainly because I don't know what's in it. I've got a fair idea there's a lot of the wrong sort of calcium in it. I can tell by the way my kettle fur's up, you know. So if you can avoid it, just avoid it. But it's a subject matter that many people will have their own opinions on. Better safe than sorry is the old expression, isn't it? I don't believe, personally, that I've ever passed on anything specific that's nasty from one plant to another. Because if that was happening, it would be continuously happening. And I'd have plants going down, they'd be dropping. Yeah? You get a problem in a pot, pass it on to the next number of pots till that bit of water runs out. That will then get worse in each of those pots, slowly but surely. And there would be visible results, actual signs of the fact that things were getting passed on. Now, I'm reasonably confident that I do pass on a few bugs, because you wash them off the bottom of the base of your plant, like some of the scale I've had, say, on the base of some of the cattleyas. Well, I give them a flipping good flush. Some of those scale are going to get washed out the bottom of the pot into the water and then promptly get put into the next pot. So it is possible to pass on the visible bugs, the ones you can actually see. But as I said, just remember the type of things at the microscopic level that are going on in your pots, to one degree or another. There's good and bad in there. And the goal is for the good stuff to be dominant and do its job. And the bad stuff, not enough to take your plant down or your root system down, because it can. I mean, I've had a couple of plants over the years, not this week, over the years, that have just suddenly gone down. They've gone all soggy, they've got some sort of bacterial infection, and it worries me that the previous time I watered that plant, did I pass whatever did that to that plant onto another one? Well, there would be a chain effect if that had happened. You know, I mean, when those bacterial rots hits your plant, boy, do they go down fast. It's days, not weeks or months, it's days. And they go soggy and they fall apart, and they just go downhill fast. Well, obviously, if a plant was in that state, already in an advanced state, and water went through that pot into a bowl or bucket or whatever you want to call it, and then got used on other plants, you are probably passing it on. And then it will depend a lot on the strength of the plant and the type of media, whether it will just fight it off or whether it will go down as well. And some of those bad plants that I've had, sorry, fans have just, I was trying to get this done before the fans came on. Bad timing. I'll move away from them, they do mess up the sound. But yeah, it's a matter of those plants that I've had that were bad, I know the sequence I water my plants, so like the next half a dozen plants or so that would have followed on from that one, I've kept a very close watch on, and it didn't happen. That doesn't mean to say it can't, but it didn't. So in my practical experience, I've never seen any harm in sharing water, and there may be some benefits, because some of the good stuff that you wash out of one pot then gets put into the next one and the next one, and you build up these colonies of these useful things in your pot, and just hope that they are stronger and more dominant than some of the bad stuff you can also get in your pot. But most of that bad stuff is quick acting. If it's there, you're going to know your plant's going to go down. You know, it's just a thing that happens. Rarely, but it does. If you've never seen one of those bacterial rots, then think yourself lucky, because it's horrible. You know, it's literally you watered a plant, it was perfectly fine, got new growth come in, you pick it up next time, your new growth's gone, it's gone all brown, and you look at your bulbs and you think, oh, they're a funny orangey colour. And in the worst case, you give them a squeeze to see if they're firm, and they burst. They're full of foul-smelling liquid. That's when it's bad. And obviously, any of that liquid that comes out of that plant must not get near anything else, and you must thoroughly sterilise your hands and anything else that got touched or dripped on or anything. You really got to go to town at that point. But you make your choice with water. I can't have enough water to be able to uniquely water each pot with the waste that would come out of the bottom. I just wouldn't be able to justify it, so I do share water, and I've said I've got some damage limitation in there, and who knows, there may even be some benefits of doing it. Yeah, but you take your choices. There is always a risk. If you don't want any risk, then don't share water. If you believe the risk is acceptable, then do your own thing. Nobody really can tell you what to do. You should be able to weigh things up for yourself. And a lot of the times you will come back with the answer, I haven't got enough water to water each pot individually. I mean, I'm just about to change that. But I mean, I use that glass and I pour 3 or 4 of those through each pot. Well, that's probably 1/3 of a litre. Times 150 pots. Do the maths. I cannot afford to throw away that amount of RO water, and I can't use my tap water. And everybody's going to say, why don't you collect rainwater? You certainly get enough of it in the UK. This is true. I'd then have to store it somewhere. Chances are that would have to be stored outside. I've got to go out and get it. I've got to bring it in. And there is potential for things going wrong in stored rainwater. You can get sterilisation type tablets to add to your barrels of rainwater to keep them sterile, but you know, you get mosquito larvae, you get frogs in there. There's all sorts of things that can get in rainwater that you'd rather not have, and in addition to that, you could be washing them down off your roof. You know, how clean are your gutters up there? Mine are full of moss and muck and all sorts. So I'm not collecting rainwater off of any roofs around here. I could put great big shallow buckets out in the garden when it rains and collect it. That means mucking about. And yes, it may be worthwhile, but the bottom line with that for me is I cannot be bothered. I've got an RO unit to produce my water. That's why I got it. I don't personally want to be messing about with buckets and pails and barrels to use the rainwater, because it would have to be collected clean, straight from the sky. In some parts of the world, even that water's not clean. You live in industrial areas, you're washing all the muck down out of the sky, straight into your barrels and then putting it straight on your orchids. And there's some nasty stuff, sulphurs and things like that in the air. So I start with clean water, I add my known stuff into it, and I use it. And I use small amounts, and when it's run out, I mix up some more. So I waste virtually none. Well, that's how I like it. Yeah, but you make your choice, but make it an educated choice rather than you know, just doing as you're told, if you know what I mean. Have a think about it, think of the consequences, good and bad, and see what you think. But the risk will be there. So if anybody asks me, would I recommend sharing water, the answer for me will always be no. If you can possibly avoid it, don't share water. Just because I do, I got my reasons, I've given you them. But I would still say the bottom line is, if you at all possible, don't share your water. Keep everything clean. And see how you get on. Proof of the pudding? Yeah? Proof of my pudding, you're looking at it. Do you see any serious consequences around here of sharing water? Because I don't. So there you go. But that's my take on it. Everybody's got a different opinion. But it still comes down to two opinions, basically. Do you share or don't you? So it's a yes or no answer. You can't say, well, I do sometimes, but not others. Well, if you're going to do it sometimes and not others, you just well do it all the time and don't waste any. Okay, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.